Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, October 11th. The LA Galaxy getting back in the groove, ready to face Portland Timbers over the weekend on Saturday. A huge game, lots of ramifications. We're going to go over that schedule, talk a little bit about that, get you through some of those things, look at the international players, how much they played, how much they haven't played, maybe a worrying red sign, flashing red sign, maybe injury sign for Jonathan Dos Santos. We'll talk a little bit about that. Maybe not. Don't want to reveal too much at the beginning here. But mostly we just want to get you prepped and ready for this week that is coming. And obviously we'll have a show on Thursday night that gets you ready for that Portland Timbers game. But today it's more about some broad questions, some broad answers, and focusing in on those standings. Any other stuff we can sort of throw in there to help us do that tonight. He's back covering in for the Panda, who is away on international duty. That's what we do. We send Kevin away on international duty now. It's Mr. Christian Miles. Christian, how's it going, buddy?
I'm great, man. It's good to know that I'm the Panda's stunt man here, his stunt double, but happy to fill in. Great to be part of the show. I don't know about you, Josh, but I'm ready for this international break to be over.
Yeah, it's a weird sort of stop-start, weird thing that, like, we talked to Jonathan Bond on Thursday night show. He was on our show for a little bit, and we were just sort of reminiscing with him about some things. He's like, no, it's weird for me too. He goes, it's like we're super rested, we're ready to go, we play a game, and then by the end of the week we're tired again because it's 3 games in a week. He goes, it's a lot of resting and being tired, and it throws things off. And we're like, the fans feel it, the players are feeling it. Another weird MLS schedule this year. And by the way, I don't know how weird it is whenever we think about what's coming down the line, but it feels weird this year.
It's so LA, isn't it? Hurry up and wait. You sit around for like 10 days and then boom, 3 games in 8 days. Keep your fingers crossed everybody comes back fit and healthy from international duty too.
Yeah, there's some questions about that too. We'll do that. But first, let's check in. Listen, a lot of times on the show, we do not have time for personal check-ins, right?
Yes.
And we today, there's not a whole bunch to talk about. Listen, we're going to get an hour out of this, no problem. We'll have plenty to talk about, but we can take 5 minutes at the beginning of the show. And my favorite part, Christian, is that this annoys some of our listeners so much. Like, they'll tell me it took 7 minutes and 37 seconds to finally talk about the Galaxy. I'm like, hey, it's my show. I do what I want. But just, how was your weekend? I know you were busy. You were flying around like crazy, man, and doing all sorts of things. Recently, you were covering a whole bunch of games, right?
Yeah, I do a little side gig where I do some rugby work on this side, doing some commentary in Denver, and I got caught up in the whole, as you and I were talking before we came on, in the Southwest drama, and that was an experience I hadn't been a part of, but got home safe and sound, had a busy weekend of that and college soccer. Not as interesting as your weekend because I feel like I'm talking to the legendary Josh Guesman inside a very sexy lava lamp.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I know.
Is that the look you're going for?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I want everybody to be totally freaked out about it. No, Christian, I spent this weekend perfecting the lighting here in the Corner of the Galaxy lair that we're calling. Not so much the studio, it's the lair right now. And so I now have 12.
Ooh, you just change colors.
Yeah, 12 separate lights in here that all can be assigned a different color. Now, of course, I normally just have them in, general colors and do things that I want to do. But I mean, there is a possibility eventually of, having full-on thunderstorms in here. I've shown you a little bit about that beforehand. But, obviously can change it up depending on what our mood is. So on Monday nights, we usually go tech green. So we got tech green rolling tonight. So I did that. But really, the highlight of my weekend was two things. One, going to Lowe's looking for Halloween stuff. I don't know if everybody's aware. Lowe's has already switched over to Christmas. Christian, you know this. Yeah, so they've already switched over to Christmas, which was great. So we went there for Halloween stuff and bought Christmas stuff, which doesn't really bother me. And my son got to check out Christmas for the first time, and judging by the fact that all Guesmans love Christmas, he was enthralled with Christmas. He was like, "This is my holiday right here." So he liked that.
That's
and then
weird. It's so weird.
It is and it isn't, but at the same time, I was like, do you really want to let this stuff go? Like, it's here on the shelf in front of you. Like, this sparkly light that I'm going to put into my, at my front porch, I need that now, because what if they don't have it whenever I come back in like a month, and it's not there. So big plans for Christmas this year, Christian. I think we're going with an outdoor railroad in front of my place. So I'm just saying that might be in the works. So anyway, that's where we're going. But how about you? What'd you do?
That's exciting. Well, I worked, but I'm just floored away because I thought that Lowe's is a little bit behind the curve right now, because I remember going into Costco on Labor Day and I saw the Costco guy like unboxing all the Christmas stuff, like for the tree to put up on Labor Day. Yeah. Like they're jumping Halloween, they're jumping, Veterans Day and Thanksgiving.
It's time. It's time. It's time. I'm one. You can't have Christmas too early for me. I'm one of those people. I have been singing Christmas songs for the last people hate this about me. I've been singing Christmas songs for the last 3 months. I'm like, all right, it's almost time. We're getting there. So anyway, so that was fun, the whole deal. And then my real big thing that I did this weekend was I changed all the toilet seats in the house. I'm going to tell everybody right now in the chat room, if you want to change somebody's life in a positive direction, change their toilet seat. And listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. Don't go with the plastic ones. The plastic ones are not where it's at. You need the wood ones. All right, they are solid. They're comfortable. Wood is hard yet soft at the same time. And whatever you do, do not get one of those soft ones, Christian. Like the ones that are like cushioned or something like that. That's wrong on so many levels.
Do you remember I'm old enough to remember the shag carpeted covered toilets.
Oh yeah.
Don't need to get those. And you know what? I would go with. I'm going to disagree with you on the wood, because if you have a bidet, then you could possibly rot the wood, and then you want to go with the plastic.
The Bidget. That's I've heard about those. So that's a good sign. I
will say, this is more than all the listeners need to know. Game changer.
Game changer. Well, being Kevin's not here, they're game changer. All right. So there we go.
Welcome to Panda and Pato's Morning Zoo. Pato, and Panda in the morning. Panda and Pato in the morning.
Yeah, there you go. That's the most annoying drop that we have. So, all right. Yeah, now we can rock and roll. Okay, enough check-ins. There we go. I think we've got covered everything. Only 8 minutes and 6 seconds into the show, we have somehow survived all that. All right, the LA Galaxy have 7 players away on international break. We wanted to sort of touch on each of them, just because listen, there's this balance, Christian, and I always find this balance, because Galaxy fans should be like going, oh, yay, they didn't play. And then at the same time, it's like, well, why aren't they playing? It's one of those that you sort of have to sit there and look at. So we'll just go down the list that I have. Some did play, some didn't play. Danilo Acosta is the first one and actually got a start against Mexico in their 3-0 loss to Mexico on the weekend game that they had. So he only played 45 minutes, went the first half, and they got subbed out of that second half. So he was there in that first game they played against Costa Rica. He did not play, but was on the bench and was available. So Danilo Acosta usually doesn't get a lot of time with Honduras. Actually got a start in one of their bigger games. It fell flat for them, and maybe that's why they rotated some players for that middle game a little bit, knowing that they weren't going to be taking Mexico down anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of you look at that one, you're like, anytime you're subbed off at halftime, it doesn't look as though Danilo had the greatest of first halves. But, they got a big one coming up against Jamaica coming up on Wednesday, so maybe he can redeem himself, a chance to think things over. Because he didn't, I don't think was it the game against Costa Rica? I don't think he played in either. So
yeah, he did not play in that Costa Rica game, correct? Yeah, so he didn't play that. Then there's O'Neal Fisher, who did not play but was on the bench in that 2-0 loss to the United States, and then did play 90 minutes, started and went 90 minutes in the 0-0 draw with Canada. So that was actually a big game for Jamaica in that whole thing. They have not been playing well. They went and at least held Canada to a draw on that one. They will come up and face Honduras coming up midweek on that 13th. Here's another fun one. Nico Hämäläinen plays for Finland. They are not in a 3-game set over in Europe, so they're actually playing 2 games. He played 30 minutes in a 2-1 loss to Ukraine on 10-9 and has another one coming up. Let's see, what's today, the 11th? So tomorrow at 5:05 p.m. apparently Pacific time. Oh, excuse me, I jumped that one. At 7 a.m. Pacific time versus Kazakhstan. So it will be at Kazakhstan. Nico Hämäläinen possibly gets some time in that, but he came on in a sub in a 2-1 loss to Ukraine. So he's an interesting one. He gets a lot of international time for Finland.
Yeah.
But I would argue that if Jorge Villafana isn't injured as much, that Nico Hämäläinen would be seeing a lot less time at left back than he currently is.
Yeah, I totally agree here. And he's actually not an out-and-out first choice start for Finland because he's come on in a relief role. I think, like you said, a half an hour, and I think he's about 8 or 9 caps to his name. So he's not out at first choice. That's good for the Galaxy, but that's a long distance to travel. The good news, as opposed to this 3-game round in CONCACAF, it's just double for UEFA, and it's played on Tuesday.
Right.
So even if he does go the full 90 against Borat's best 11, he's going to be okay, and could be available for first choice because you probably know better than I do. I don't know what's going on with Villafana right now.
Yeah, so just still injured. So he had a similar injury to last time, and so the injury he had was he had some sort of hyperextension, but the hyperextension was so bad that the bones actually hit each other, right? And that gives him a bone bruise.
Yeah.
And so it's a bone bruise as the result of a hyperextension. And as we know about bone bruises they're not necessarily damaging, but they're very painful to play on.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things until he can play in sort of almost pain-free, you can't really do a lot to that. And so they've been trying to get him back. But I mean, in one way, I think you have to look at it and say, Vanny and company got it right in terms of going out and getting somebody like Hämäläinen, which, by the way, we don't know the details of his loan with QPR. We don't know whether or not there's an option to buy. We really don't know anything about it. In fact, I know it's being kept out of us discussing it. So it's just an interesting sort of thing. And we know he was in MLS before and playing with LAFC, but never really played that much for LAFC, but now getting a lot more playing time with the LA Galaxy. I think that there are positives to his game. There's a lot of negatives to his game, too. He's a very positive player in terms of he likes to move forward. His defending, though, and being he is a defender first, is something that I think requires... Or still, there's a lot left to desire there from him.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that. I like the defensive side that Jorge brings. He's good at tracking. Those bone bruises are tough. Anytime you put that weight on there, it's immensely painful. He's been so durable, Villafana, and I think the miles are starting to add up on him. And, Hämäläinen's tailed off just a little bit here in the last, 4 or 5 games or so. I thought he started well, so... that's an interesting little conundrum, but it's nice to have a little bit of depth out there, and we'll see how Greg approaches this.
Yeah, it's he's sort of always the question mark. But I mean, honestly, you have Danilo Acosta, who also is available at that position, but hasn't seen much time at all. Actually getting some time in the national team, maybe there's something that Greg sees in his time against Mexico where they got beat 3-0 and got subbed out at the first half. Maybe there's some redeeming qualities. I didn't watch him play, so I can't tell you that, hey, it was all his fault. He was the reason that they gave up 3 goals. Could be. And maybe that means he won't see any more time for the LA Galaxy the rest of this year. But it's just... there's not a lot of choices over there right now, and it's narrowed down by the fact that Villafana is not 100%. So, I still feel, and we're going to go over some defensive stats here that our crack, as Larry's team, our cracked research team, and I say cracked research team came up with. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. Let's get to some of the other guys. I want to talk about Raveloson, played for Madagascar. Here's the interesting thing. Madagascar had not won a World Cup qualifier until they won this last game against the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They had played them at the DRC. And they lost 2-0. Raveloson started, went 90 minutes for that. We told you, I think, about that on Thursday. Then played yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. I caught it after I'd been done working out, and I hopped out of the shower and I turned on my phone on ESPN Plus, and you can watch the African qualifying on ESPN Plus. So I flipped it up real quick, and there's Raveloson coming out, and actually Madagascar. So I saw Madagascar score their only goal of this game, which ended up winning it, and it was like in the first 3 minutes of the game. So they went up 1-0 and then held off the Democratic Republic of the Congo. But Raveloson now 90 minutes. He's done will head back to the United States. But if you remember, he's one of the guys who was not available because of quarantine reasons last time. And so we don't know if any of that has been rectified, any situations have changed. So we do not know. And there's a chance that he might not even be available for Saturday's game, even if he comes back. So,
Josh, you know better than I do. I mean, was there a second game? I think they had one against Benin that was coming up either today or tomorrow, so he's not going to feature for that?
Yeah, he might not. See, I have it at 10-7 and 10-10. I didn't see another one, but there is. They're in a 3-set too, aren't they?
I think so, yeah. I think they have one coming either today, but I could be wrong. I don't know, but I mean, I'm just wondering because the fact that, you're basically looking at a 15 to 18-hour flight.
It's a ridiculous
from Africa to make it here. So, a day difference makes a huge difference from a Galaxy perspective, especially for a guy that plays such an important position for LA.
Yeah, and he does. He absolutely sets it up. Let's see. I'm looking at it. So I show their next one at 11/11, so November 11th. So they might only be in a 2-set. So, and that's Benin is that game. Yeah. So I believe he's actually should be on his way back. So he needs to get back because I think that he's going to be in quarantine, and we'll see whether or not he's available to actually play on Saturday. So we
need him. We need him so, especially against Portland.
Yeah, and Portland. We'll talk about Portland a little bit, I'm sure, throughout the show. But Portland's on an unbelievably good streak. They're winners of 7 of their last 8. By the way, they're undefeated in those last 8 games. The only one they've dropped was a draw. So they're not nobody to be messed around with. And I think earlier in the season, maybe the Galaxy matched up well against them. Coming now into this part of the season, it would show, at least on paper, to be a little bit of a mismatch just in terms of the different things and where everybody's going. So Raveloson will be one to watch. There is we'll just throw it in now, there is a media call scheduled for Thursday. Which is good. Always like Thursday media calls. So that way we can actually talk about it on our Thursday night show. So that would be our only media availability. There wasn't one last week because there was no game, so we didn't need to talk to anybody. So that's fine. Let's get through the last 2 players here. The big ones, Sebastian Lletget for the United States, Jonathan Dos Santos for Mexico. Sebastian Lletget did not play in the U.S.'s 2-0 win over Jamaica. That was it. He was on the bench. But he did not play, and that was fine. He started and went all 90 minutes at Panama, the 1-0 loss. Listen, I have been a big Sebastian Lletget supporter in terms of the way he plays and sort of the way he does things, and I understand sort of the way he moves, and I will tell you that the game against Panama was absolutely a horrible game for him. So it was not a good game. If in fact he looked like LA Galaxy Sebastian Lletget a lot more than he did look like U.S. men's national team Sebastian Lletget. The guy who scores like once every 4 games for the U.S. men's national team is actually a very dangerous player for the U.S. men's national team. So a lot of things not going right for Sebastian Lletget right now. I think you hope that something shakes loose against Costa Rica if he gets some more playing time in that. Don't know that that's going to be the case after not playing very well against Panama, but they have the 10-13 game versus Costa Rica coming up, and so that will be the game on Wednesday. So he'll do that, and then he'll come back to the LA Galaxy and should be available to play the weekend on Saturday. So, but not a ton of minutes on his legs right now. I think maybe if you're an LA Galaxy fan, maybe you hope he doesn't play against Costa Rica, doesn't put any more minutes on those legs because he will be available to play against Portland, and I don't know if Galaxy fans are excited about that or not. So we'll see about that. Jonathan Dos Santos did not play in the 1-1 draw versus Canada on 10-7. He was on the bench, was available for selection that game. Then mystery thing happened. 10-10 versus Honduras. Mexico wins 3-0. We talked about that. He did not play, and he did not dress. He was not available. He wasn't on the bench. He didn't play, none of that. So I reached out to a couple people to sort of see if there was anything going on. I'm told there is no injury or anything. It's coach's decision. So I don't know if that's good or bad for Galaxy fans. You're talking about with Sebastian Lletget and Jonathan Dos Santos, I will say 2 players who I think have underperformed this year for the LA Galaxy. And I feel like that form is now starting to affect their international form as well. And so for Jonathan Dos Santos, for whatever reason, didn't play in the first game, didn't even dress the second game. It's a big question mark now about what you see against El Salvador. So it's Mexico at El Salvador on 10-13. The only thing you're looking for in that is whether or not Jonathan Dos Santos is available, Christian, because you need to know something weird is either going on with the national team. Maybe it is an injury and it's just something they're trying to keep very low key and that type of thing. But it's certainly interesting to see Jonathan Dos Santos, who last year was a staple for the Mexican national team, has been for a while, doesn't even dress against a Honduras team. Maybe they decided they didn't need him, which they didn't. They won 3-0, and they're like, just take the day off. But still, that's not usually how that works in international soccer. You'd at least expect him to be on the bench.
It's an interesting situation, and not to be disparaging, but based upon current form, I'm puzzled why Tata Martino called him up, because he's certainly not international class. No disparaging him, but just being objective about it, and also too, on the backside of that, there's always fitness issues with Jonah, and one wonders if something has popped up here, because for the last 2 years, that's kind of been the underlying theme and the recurring theme of his career. And for me, one of the big reasons why he's underachieved, he just hasn't had a good run of games. And I was really surprised that Martino called him up.
Right. Yeah. It's it's interesting because you look at Sebastian.
Is it a reputation call up for me?
He does deserve it,
because based upon current form, there's better players on current form deserving a spot in that Mexico 23 or 18, I think, than Jonah right now.
Yeah, I think that he has always shown that whenever he plays for Mexico that he plays well. And so it's one of those, it's like, yeah, you're going to call him up because that whenever he gets on the field, he knows how to do that. But, at the same time, they must be seeing something in training or something that's going on right now that's saying, that's not how I feel. And listen, Galaxy fans can tell that story the entire year, which is Jonathan Dos Santos has not been a shadow of himself this year, is super quiet, disappears in games, doesn't impose his will sort of on things. And remember, this is after Raveloson got brought in to allow him to get forward more. And we have seen none of that. We have seen zero, zilch, nothing of that. So, listen, Greg Vanney has some things to figure out. I don't think he has incorporated Sebastian Lletget well into the formation. I don't think Sebastian Lletget understands what Greg Vanney wants him to do in that formation. I think that Lletget has felt a lot more comfortable under Greg Berhalter, but I was listening to Paul Tenorio on Counterattack on Sirius XM, and Paul was saying, basically is, whenever he's asked to be the guy, like he was, over this weekend for the U.S., it's more difficult for him to play that position than if he's just a facilitator. And I've always thought he played the facilitator role very well. I don't need Sebastian Lletget scoring 12 goals. I need Sebastian Lletget scoring 3 or 4 goals and assisting on 8 to 10 more of those. That's what I'd expect from sort of a guy in the center of that, playing more of the position the Galaxy have 0 of, which is that 10 role. Being a playmaker, creating, finding gaps in defenses, playing that ball in, and doing those things. And we have not seen that from either Jonathan Dos Santos, who has been put in a position to do that, or Sebastian Lletget this year. So Vanney has created, either in his tactics or at least in trying to get these guys to understand things, sort of this hole in the center of the midfield. And it is one of the biggest problems the LA Galaxy have right now.
I spot on. I think you hit the nail on the head. There's been a huge vacuum really in the center of the park here, and I think that's where we've been overrun and really had a lot of problems, because we're not seeing the box-to-box Jonah Dos Santos that we saw 3 years ago, and Sebastian, for whatever reason, has looked lost and really hasn't found his groove within this Galaxy setup. And I was talking to Joe Totino about this, and we're talking about what a polarizing figure Sebastian is, because we've seen him perform really well for the U.S. And the Galaxy, of course, in the Galaxy camp, there's a real divisive opinion about him. Are we going to see the Sebastian Lletget from the U.S. men's national team? Are we not? And we haven't seen the best of Sebastian in Galaxy colors. I think that's safe to say. And if we're being quite frank, and where he fits into the system for me is just a lingering question, because this is a player that has ability. He is a linker. He can knit those lines together. I don't think he's that direct presence. He's not that number 10, if you will. I thought he might be, and I think he's more comfortable in the center of the park, but that's just not him. He's a linker. He holds possession extremely well, and if you put him in his spaces, he can find spaces and gaps. So where he fits in from the future here is going to be really interesting, and that also is going to be a central figure and a factor as the Galaxy progress in the season, because he's such a big, prominent player for them.
Yeah, it's funny that these two have sort of had the same sort of type of season where they just haven't been that impactful, and that they play in a similar position a lot of times too, with Jonathan Dos Santos, Sebastian Lletget. For me, I know Sebastian Lletget especially, and seeing U.S. men's national team Twitter overreact to everything is always fun too. But, there were a lot of people who say Sebastian Lletget doesn't even deserve to be on this team, and that's just a wrong take, just in terms of the amount that he's put in this year. Even for the U.S. men's national team, this year has been a tremendous amount, and the U.S. has benefited greatly from him being out there. The knock on him is his passing and his movement, right? Because they're talking about passing backwards or passing sideways. And I know Galaxy fans feel that. And I think this was the first time I've seen sort of quote unquote Galaxy Lletget sort of hit the wall on the U.S. men's national team side of things. And so, I was running around doing stuff in the house whenever I was watching the game. So I can't say that I studied it exclusively, but you could see that things were not clicking there, and there was a real problem in that midfield. Listen, there was a problem from that entire game, so that entire lineup did not gel well together, and they had a lot of problems moving through the midfield. So,
is it me, Josh? For me, Sebastian Lletget is not going to be that direct threat like we were talking about. He's not the guy that's going to ignite your attack and be that catalyst. But what he can do, he adds a defensive element. But he's also a guy that comes in and he can kill a game.
Yes.
Because he doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't put a lot of feet wrong. He doesn't put a foot wrong. And that's why I think he's at his best. If you're trying to ignite this side, especially in a direct counterattacking situation, that's not where he is going to fit in. If you're in control of this game and you want to put it off and kill off a game, then I think that's where he's at his best, because he's great at holding possession. He's great at linking up. He's great at finding spaces. So it's a real puzzling conundrum with him.
But I mean, here's the rub on that, right? When I always say that deals always make sense, but you have to know how much things are costing in order for them to make sense, right? So Sebastian Lletget, being a guy who can come off the bench and kill a game, is great at $350,000, $400,000 a year. It's not great as a TAM player who you're expecting to contribute greatly to the offense, and that hasn't been the case this year. Now, the LA Galaxy play well. I think his goals plus assists were still, in the upper part of the Galaxy lineup whenever you looked at it. His goals and assists per 90, so he still provides something to that attack. But I think I expected him to be able to exploit and be able to pass between lines a little bit better, and that's not what we're seeing right now. There is a lot of sideways stuff. Sideways sometimes is fine. Sometimes backwards is fine. I'm not one of these people who sees the ball goes backwards and like falls off their chair angry. I'm like, no. Because I think if you force a ball into situations too, Christian, that's worse, in my opinion, than passing the ball backwards or doing things. Now, if you look at the game that he played, for the U.S. men's national team, he ran away from space instead of into space. He ran away from space, and I don't think he does that with the Galaxy. I would actually say this performance is worse than I've seen him play than Galaxy, because a lot of times he will turn and find space and sort of try to move the ball forward, and then not seeing any options, move the ball sideways. So for me, I'm still, like I said, divisive. There's a lot of reasons that people don't like Sebastian Lletget, and there's a lot of reasons. One reason they don't like Sebastian Lletget, obviously, is because he is good looking and he's on Instagram a lot, so people don't like that.
I hate him.
Yeah, it's the same reason people hate me, Christian. Is
and he's dating, and he's with a pop star who's lovely, wonderful, and
all that. Which people will say is a distraction, right? Oh, that's too much. He can't handle it, the whole deal.
They said that about Beckham too.
Yeah, that David could hardly play. It was one of those guys. He wasn't even that good. So anyway, so that's sort of where we sit. Just a little update and to close out sort of the international stuff. The one and Johnny Perez is down with Galaxy 2, but is a first team member. Johnny Perez actually made the Mexico U20 squad, and he was in Spain for this tour that they were doing, and they were playing, and so they played a couple different games. He actually played in this last game. They lost, but he got to play, and so that's a good sign. We talk about good things whenever people play. Well, this is a good thing whenever Johnny Perez plays. This is getting international minutes at a high level. The entire Mexico squad now, that U20 Mexico squad, will head back to Mexico and finish out the rest of the camp. So, so that's sort of it. Again, if you're looking at it, I don't see, outside Raveloson, who got 290 minutes in there, and he's at 180 minutes for the thing, and has, an 18-hour flight and however long it takes. I mean, he's the one you worry about sort of the most with that. Jonathan Dos Santos not playing. If he's going to play for the Galaxy, is fine. Sebastian Lletget only playing 90 minutes, and that is fine. Nico Hamalainen depends on how many minutes he sort of finishes up with, but you would expect that he will be available and be able to play on Saturday. Although, if I remember correctly, he may also be one of the quarantine question marks about coming back as well. So lots of little things to sort of pay attention to in this, and we'll find out more on Thursday. So that'll sort of be the the way that we'll be able to find out who's available, who's not available. So I'm sure I'll be on that call on Thursday. We touched on it though, Christian. We touched on rotation of players. We touched on minutes, and we touched on a whole bunch of things. So Larry went, and I asked Larry a question. I said, "Hey Larry, has the LA Galaxy started a repeat of a lineup anytime this year?" And Larry went through, and he says, this is his email to me. "Sir," I like how he calls me sir. He's a very nice man. "Sir, from what I can determine, the Galaxy have not started the same 11 more than once this season." So they have not repeated the lineup. And it's funny because most of us are probably sitting there going, well, I bet it was close though. And it was close. There were a bunch of times where it's just one person who gets changed out and little things. But the bottom line is there has been no consistency this year. And specifically when you look at the defense, that's where everybody wants to point fingers and question marks. And certainly for a defense that has been as toothless as the LA Galaxy's defense has been at times, you could, I thought that was a good word, right? That makes sense. You could ask questions about why the Galaxy don't have a more consistent back four. So Larry looked up the back four and did this as well. He says, as far as the back four foursomes have started the same game 3 times, right? So basically those foursomes have started in a different role 3 times. So they're repeating some of those. The best record, by the way, is Araujo, Depew, Koulibaly, and Villafana. Their win-loss record is 2-1-0. Villafana, Williams, Depew, and Araujo, their win-loss record is 1-1-1. Okay, Araujo, Koulibaly, Williams, and Hämäläinen, their win-loss record is 1-2-0. And then you have Hämäläinen, Depew, Koulibaly, and Araujo, which is one of the ones that we've had most recently. Their win-loss record is 0-2-1. Okay, so those are those ones, which I thought was interesting. And then Larry goes on and says, one foursome of the back line has started the same game 4 times. Okay, so this is the most consistent lineup at defense the Galaxy have had. They've done it 4 times. Villafana, Williams, Steres, and Araujo. Their win-loss record, 2-2-0. 2 wins, 2 losses, 0 draws. So, we've seen this, and this isn't just so much in relation to the defense. But when you see this and how much Greg Vanney has had to rotate, and by the way, I think the first question we have to ask, and it's coming up in World Cup qualifiers because of the 3 games, it's been coming up throughout the LA Galaxy season, is why does Greg Vanney rotate his players so much? Why are coaches rotating their players so much? And is there even a need to rotate those players? Christian, I mean, we talk about modern footballers. We talk about the limits to their physicality, to their preparation for all these things. But 3 games in a week is a lot of miles. You have to rotate, right?
You have to rotate, period. I mean, you don't have a choice. The schedule has dictated the coaching decision in this regard. And sometimes you can get away with a lack of rotation, I believe, in central defense where there's a minimal amount of running. But then you throw in the fact that there's been a lot of injuries back there, specifically with Derek Williams right now. And now we've seen Sega go down, and he struggled with form. Nick Depew and Daniel Steres really haven't got themselves in the good books of Greg Vanney and really haven't staked that out-and-out place in the center of defense. You and I have talked about this, and I know I've harped on. I don't think it's good enough collectively as a defensive unit, and the numbers back it up. And for whatever reason that may be, I don't think it's solely the back line. I don't think it's a Jonathan Bond issue. This is a team effort throughout. They're not getting the cover in central midfield, which I think is as much of a whole going forward. It's also in the back, where the back four are just not getting the protection they need. Let's be honest. We've got a 36-year-old Sasha Kleshin. We've got a 34-year-old Victor Vasquez. That's asking a lot of legs, and you're throwing out 3 games in 8 days. I'm not saying they're going to go 90 minutes, but when you're relying on players of that age in this type of really compressed environment, that's a big ask. And then you throw in the likes of Jonah Dos Santos, who hasn't been fit, and then we have a man coming back from an 18-hour flight from Madagascar, in my opinion, in Raveloson, who hasn't been the same Raveloson that we saw in the summer ever since that first round of World Cup qualification began in early September. I don't think we're seeing the best of him, and I'm not expecting goals. I'm not talking about this from popping up on set pieces and goals. I consider that gravy a bonus. I'm talking about exerting your control on midfield, strengthening a grip, protecting your back four, distributing, keeping possession, not giving the ball away, which Josh, you talked about a second ago. That is such a frustrating underlying theme right now. I think we're seeing with this Galaxy team. I mean, they shoot themselves in the foot, and it's really frustrating to see. But when they put themselves under unnecessary duress. And I think that's evidence is why, we've got the 5th worst defensive record in the league right now.
Yes.
And you're not going to win ball games because you can't rely on outscoring your opposition going forward every game. You're not going to outscore. That just is not a sustainable model in the long term. It'll get you through patches, like we saw earlier, and it'll get you through some games. And it's fun to watch. I love it as a fan. I mean, it's fun to watch. But sustainability and a long-term approach, you need to have it locked down. That's why they always say you build from the back.
Yeah, you do, and I think you touched on it too. Is the fact that midfield has been absent at times really has put this back four under some pretty extreme pressure constantly. But it's not even that; it's that the back four has to be perfect, right? That's basically what the LA Galaxy are asking the back four to be right now: is perfect, not allow a goal. Because if they do, the LA Galaxy aren't winning that game. It's been proven over. They have one win all year whenever they have scored, whenever they have allowed the first goal. That was the very first game of the season, by the way. So it's been a very long time since that happened. And right now, the Galaxy have equally scored the first goal and given up. It's 50-50 in terms of those games, right? And I don't think any Galaxy game this year has ended in 0-0. So I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I don't think that happened, right? So they are split evenly right now between games they scored first in and games that they gave up the first goal in. And you can see that their record is moving more and more towards 500. I mean, they're at 500, right? This is one of those things that you look at. You look at it and say, well, that's not surprising at all. Again, the LA Galaxy. You want to talk about a 500 schedule? 11, 11, and 6. A 500 schedule. You have, and it's not because you have draws in there, but basically the draws plus those wins and the losses, 11 wins, 11 losses, everything has sort of equaled itself out. So listen, going back to the question is, do you rotate? Yes, you have to rotate. And you're right, for all the reasons that you talked about. And so everybody who's saying, well, Greg just needs to play a consistent lineup from here on out, it's like, you can do that, but you put a pretty serious risk on guys getting tired and making mistakes for that reason. And so I think Greg is trying to really find the people he trusts in the situations that he trusts and try to manage those the best he can. So your starting 11, everybody has this like ideal starting 11 in their mind. And most people, I think in Galaxy Land go, oh yeah, absolutely 100%. You should start, Joveljic and Chicharito up top together. And it's like, okay, so where do you go from that? And this is where I've said on the podcast now for months. Where do you go? How do you move away from that once you've started that way and know that it can't stay that way for 90 minutes because you don't have the horses to be able to play that system for 90 minutes. So you're going to eventually have to do something. So where do you go with that? Which is why Vanny more than likely says Joveljic comes off the bench because I can go into that set and then work it if I have to. And then he tries to put people in positions to succeed. I see him trying to do that. The problem is the guys that he's trying to put positions into, Jonathan Dos Santos, Sebastian Lletget, aren't succeeding. He talks about execution being the biggest difference right now for the LA Galaxy, and it is. It's execution. They are not finishing the chances. And in some cases, I have not had a problem even during this this winless streak that they're on. I have not had a problem in terms of their chance creation. Maybe one or two games where they didn't play very well and you're like, well, you're never going to get it done with that. I can understand that. But overall, especially in the last 2 or 3 games, the chances have been there. The finishing has not been there. So again, I don't know if this all goes into tired legs. And anytime I say that, people want to scream, stop making excuses for the Galaxy. But I'm a realist, so I will look at everything and try to determine what the reason is. But you can certainly see, look at that LAFC. You want to know why? And everybody sort of saw this. You want to know why that El Tráfico was the worst El Tráfico out of any of them? Was because it was the third game of the 3 in a week, and the first half was amazing and it was exciting and it was end to end and everybody was sort of, and then what happened? Everything, it went out. The air was done. That was it. Nobody had any more legs. Everybody was tired. Game over. Thank you very much. I mean,
yeah, it was sloppy. I would have a bone to pick with you. I don't think they created enough against LAFC, but I'm 100% on the balance and the gist of your point on board with that. I thought it was great against RSL. It's troubling that it's obviously when Greg Vanny says he's not bothered by this and it was taking a lot of the positives from that loss to Real Salt Lake. The reason why is because the chances are there. And if you're creating chances, then that's all you can really ask. It's down to the players to finish it off. And Chicharito's at a bad patch right now. And we're not getting the goals from midfield that we were getting before, like we were getting from Raveloson, Lletget chipping in. Cabral has more miss than hit. I know
right.
you and Sophie talked about him. I'm with Sophie in this camp. I don't see it in terms of a long process with him, but that's one factor, one ingredient in a larger picture of things. So the chance creation is there. They will get those goals. And, the question is, how do you get it right in defense? And when you were talking, I was thinking about this. Everybody has their ideal lineup and everything. Does Greg Vanney have his ideal back four? Does he have his ideal central defensive pairing if everyone's fit?
I mean, I think he does. Well, I mean, I think he certainly had an idea.
For me, I see Koulibaly and Williams as the future.
Yeah, but
lockdown.
But Koulibaly has been the biggest liability the Galaxy have had on the back line, and I don't care if you could roll out Steres and Depew right now, and I would feel better about that than I would about Koulibaly being out there. And listen, Williams supposedly closer to being healthy now, so I wouldn't be surprised if you see him against Portland, which will be fun to watch as well. But I mean, he hasn't had the minutes, he hasn't had the game time, right? So do you really want to play him in a game that's this big? I mean,
rough.
Hey, is what it is. All right, I think we're coming back here. Let's see. All right, I think we're back. Hi everybody, how's it going? I have no idea if we popped out. Complete power outage here at the COG lair. A little wind, and it all went sideways for a little bit. So, all right. I don't even know where we were talking about. So if you're joining us at this part of the podcast, I forget even what happened. We lost power for about 10 minutes. But I guess I'm gonna do this as we go as well. So everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Good thing is American Blues says we solved all the Galaxy problems while you were gone. So that's good. Good. We're done. We're done here. We can wrap it up.
So long, Josh.
Yeah, we're out of here. But yeah, complete power outage. The wind is blowing here in the OC where I'm at, so it wouldn't surprise me that we lost everything. But it was completely out. Everything was gone. We were talking about Koulibaly. Thank you, Roger, for helping out.
Yeah, we were talking about the back four, weren't we?
Yeah, we were. So we were going there. But if you look at it for me, I mean, I would think that Koulibaly and Williams are clearly the guys that Greg Vanney wanted in terms of going out to get, so you could understand it. But for me, I'm starting Steres and Depew. All right. And I know everybody would be like, how dare you do that? And the whole deal. Listen, I'm convinced that the guys who have played together the most are the guys you should play. And to me, these guys have been around each other for a little while, and when nothing has been working, and now you're going to try to go back to a Williams Koulibaly center back that hasn't really had that much playing time either. Are you going to go to Depew back with Koulibaly again for Portland? I mean, I could see Vanney doing that. It's just, you needed to stick with something in there, and even if it doesn't work, you need to stick with it at this point. 6 games remaining, you need to build something there, and I don't know if you constantly going through things, you can't just constantly keep changing things and expect it to settle and win.
That in that position, that partnership is so important. And the only, they say stability is the cornerstone of success. And with those two, they need familiarity to build that stability. You have to, and the only way you get that is through games, and you can't continually to rotate because you just don't slot in and play and form a partnership. Very rarely does that happen to a successful level. The best partnerships are ones that are developed over time, and they need time. I think you're spot on about that. And it's hard to argue against the Depew Steres argument. I'm really with you. I don't think there's that much difference between Steres and Koulibaly right now. I personally don't understand all the criticism that Steres takes on a lot of online forums. I don't think he has been as bad, has been vilified. He hasn't been outstanding, but to be honest with you, but I don't understand the criticism of him. But yeah, Josh, I think I'm on board with you. I mean, think in terms of when you look at like raw center back and raw what you want out of a central defensive partnership, you think Williams and Koulibaly, they have the athleticism, they've got the European experience. But when I see performances on the pitch, it's really hard to argue. Depew has had some moments. I mean, he's not a long-term fix for me and not the future, but in terms of what's best available right now, it's really hard to argue against that.
It's been a difference, and the Galaxy haven't had it since AJ and Omar, really, the complementary pieces at center back, right? Yeah. The ability to have the physicality that you get from Omar Gonzalez with the technical ability that AJ... Yeah. I mean, listen, Omar was not and is not a good tactical player. I will argue that forever and ever and ever. He switches off in positions that he shouldn't, and so he needs somebody who was always capable of sort of figuring out when he was going to switch off and being able to make up for that, and that was AJ. for me. And so AJ didn't have the physicality, but had the smarts to be able to shut down some of the best players in the world, and did on several occasions whenever they played some of those friendlies and different things like that. So, I think my biggest regret is that AJ De La Garza didn't play for the United States national team, and I think he didn't have the size for it, but he had the technical ability to do it. I think he got one cap and then made his one-time switch to Guam, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. So he did get to play national team football with Guam, and that's good, and I'm glad that has. But I mean, realistically, I think as Americans, and certainly in MLS, Christian, so often you want the big body and the big bruiser. I mean, everybody's saying you need the Yellow Van Damme right now. You need somebody who's got. Well, Williams is that guy. He's the guy who can be the bruiser. So who's going to be the technical guy? Guess what? It's not Koulibaly. And that's
where Williams comes in.
So Williams can. So are you going to put Depew in there? Are you going to put Steres in there? I mean, how do you do that? Do you play three in the back and go with three center backs? I honestly think some of the best time the Galaxy have played defense this year has been a three center back set, but that also puts you in a different formation with the wing backs on the outside. Julian Araujo is a perfectly capable wing back. That's fine. Hamalainen's probably a better wing back than he is a left back. So that makes sense. I mean, you have some, does Greg throw it all out there? That really changes your midfield though, and it limits the choices that you have in midfield whenever you go to the wing back set. And then what are you going to do it forward? And that limits your some of your choices up there as well. So there's some smart ways to sort of go about this. But for me, Vanny needs to pick one. And he needs to sort of sit there, and especially that center back pairing or three center backs, right? If you have three, you need to pick them and you need to start letting them sit together. 6 games left in the season, starts and stops and everything else, international breaks and all this other crazy stuff that's happened in between. But it's time to settle on something and point in a direction. 100% needs to.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to see how Williams will fit into the scheme if he does come back fit, and what decision is made, because so much is riding on that position. And for me, you always have a symbiosis of central defenders. You've got a destroyer and you've got a distributor. And like you said, Omar wasn't the most tactically disciplined player. He couldn't play himself out, but AJ was there for that. AJ didn't have that type of physicality and that really dominating, destroying presence. I think you get that with a Koulibaly. I think you can get that with a Steres as well. Distribution lacks. When you play with three at the back, you've got to be able to have ball at feet. And you don't get a lot of that with Jonathan Bond either in a supporting role. So that's something to consider. And then when you play with wing backs, you've got to have two strikers, or do you not? I mean, you want to go with a 3-5-2. Do you go with a 3-4-3 and bring Cabral into the mix and Joveljic? It does change. It throws a lot of wrinkles. I don't have the answer to it, to be honest. I just know that what we're seeing right now is not the finished article, and that's fine. Progress, like you and Sophie were saying, I think progress is being made in the grand scheme of things, even though the numbers are what they are. The defense is bad, and we're on par to a 2019 campaign, and we're on the verge of equaling our second worst winless run in history. I don't believe in numbers. I believe in the eyeball test, and I think they are heading in the right direction here. But you have to make a choice, especially now, because you can't chop and change at this point of the season when you've got games coming thick and fast like that. But that three back setup, I really like that idea. I think they could really, really add a twist here, and it can really change the complexion and really throw a monkey wrench to a lot of opposing teams.
Yeah, well, it's something you haven't seen a bunch of. The LA Galaxy have gone to it when they've needed to.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the 4-4-2 as well. They've gone to it when they've needed it, but it hasn't always been. I think it's been more successful, quite honestly, just the situation. Listen, the Galaxy are better, in my opinion, whenever they are forced into counterattacking positions, trying to strike quickly, that type of thing. And that also relieves pressure off the defense as well, whenever you're able to sort of strike that, but not for long periods of time. Now, listen, if the Galaxy get ahead of people, they're great at killing off games. They can pass the ball around and do all sorts of stuff. And as long as you're not moving to dangerous places, they're fairly comfortable in possession for that. So, I mean, it's so stupid. We've been talking about it for probably more than a month now, but you have to score the first goal if you're the LA Galaxy if you want to be successful. If they started doing that, if the Galaxy started scoring the first goal, they could actually make a deep run into the playoffs and finish off the rest of the season with like 6 straight wins. They could absolutely do it because they have I think, the mentality to be able to do it, but they have to get it. And they haven't been getting it. They haven't been getting the breaks. They haven't been doing all those things. And they have been, quote unquote, unlucky in some ways, in some of those things, right? And so all that adds up, though, right? And I don't know, somebody was saying, but good teams make their own luck, and it's true. Good teams absolutely make your own luck, and so the Galaxy are not a good team. But guess what? there aren't a bunch of good teams in Major League Soccer right now. So it's not like I'm sitting there saying, oh, well, there's a whole bunch of better teams in the Western Conference than the LA Galaxy. I don't believe that to be the case. If we look at the Western Conference and just in terms of where it is, I will tell you this, out of the last 11 games, the LA Galaxy have the second fewest points out of those last 11 games. Okay, so only Dallas has fewer points than the LA Galaxy over the last 11 games. If you shorten that up and make it like 5 games, they end up being the worst. But I just wanted to sort of, in the grand scheme of things, Galaxy have not been playing well. We know this. This is not surprising. But I also sit there and say, well, I don't know that there are a whole bunch more teams here that are absolutely 100% better than the LA Galaxy. I think there's a lot of teams that are sort of in the same position as the Galaxy, which they're not. They're not consistent. They don't put forth some consistent efforts, and because of that, the Galaxy are in this locked in. The guy with teams like Real Salt Lake, LA Galaxy, Minnesota, Vancouver, LAFC, even San Jose is still in this discussion mode up to a certain thing.
Yeah.
What do you got from the Western Conference?
I see the top 4 are in a different class at this point. Portland to me is a different class. They've really switched into high gear. Well, I know we're going to talk about that Portland game, which scares the you-know-whats out of me.
Yep.
Because I really rate this Portland team very highly. But for me, you look at spots 5 through 8, that's where it comes down to. It's a 4-horse race for 3 spots right now. And you look at those teams, those 4 teams are separated by a matter of 2 points. You look at the schedule here, Portland away to Houston and at home to FC Dallas. You got to think 2 of those 3 games, possibly 7 points out of a possible 9 in a good case scenario.
Right.
You have games away to Sporting. You have games away to Seattle. That doesn't look too promising at this point. And then for me, Josh, when you look down the line of this schedule, there's Minnesota United FC. And to me, I see it in the crystal ball. I feel it. It's going to come down to that game.
The final game. The LA Galaxy play Minnesota that final game. I went through and looked at the schedule coming up this weekend as well. Just, again, you look at the Galaxy schedule and like you said, Portland, away at Houston, host Dallas, away to Sporting Kansas City. I mean, you can pretty quickly check off Sporting Kansas City and Seattle games as games that you're going away to as losses. So I don't think that would surprise anybody whenever you look at these last 6 games. That 2 of those games for sure are already losses, and hey, maybe they'll surprise somebody. Maybe those teams won't be as motivated because they've already clinched playoff spots, which Seattle has clinched a playoff spot already. First one in the Western Conference to do that. Sporting Kansas City can clinch this weekend. So, you can sort of look at these things. Maybe there's a hiccup in some of this. Maybe the Galaxy find form. Maybe fairy dust falls from the air and sprinkles across the field. However you want it to happen, this is MLS. It's still unpredictable, but you look at that schedule and you can't say, that you're thinking, oh yeah, this is absolutely one of those things. Now, a packed schedule coming up on Saturday, only 2 games on Sunday, and if I look at this, some of the games that you're going to want to watch, absolutely. The number 2 Sporting Kansas City in the Western Conference versus number 8 in the Western Conference, Vancouver. This is big because, as we talked about in the standings, we look at the standings, Vancouver is just 2 points below the LA Galaxy. Now, all the results this weekend went the Galaxy's way. Minnesota, you wanted to lose. They did, and by the way, everybody should be thanking Colorado. They went down a man and then scored 3 goals being down a man and ended up coming from behind and won 3-1, I think, at Minnesota, if I'm correct about that. So 3-1. So that result went the way the LA Galaxy wanted. And then the Vancouver game, which is one we expected, they were at Seattle. They ended up winning, I think 4-1 was the final on that one. So Seattle did over Vancouver. So Vancouver didn't climb. Vancouver could have jumped the LA Galaxy. Minnesota could have jumped the LA Galaxy. The results went the Galaxy's way. This has been happening throughout the season, though, Christian. So the results going the Galaxy's way is also a way of saying that the Western Conference is sort of this middling, weird. There are, as you said, top 4, and then everybody else just shake them up and throw them in, except for maybe the Texas teams being the outliers in that and not necessarily competing for this. But one of the games I highlighted was that number 8, Vancouver, hosting Sporting Kansas City. So that's one to watch because Vancouver has been playing better, and it's on turf. It's in Vancouver. Kansas City has to go up there. It's a longer trip for them. So that's something to watch. Then you have, unfortunately, you're going to have to watch the number 7 versus number 13 game, which is Minnesota at Austin, right? So 7 for 13. That's a game Minnesota should win. They're at Austin though. Maybe they'll screw up, but most teams go in there except if you're the LA Galaxy and get a win. against Austin so far this year. So that's one you have to watch. We already talked about Vancouver. You have to watch, unfortunately, this is I think this is the one where Galaxy fans are like, could maybe the earth just open up and swallow this game? You're going to have to watch LAFC versus San Jose.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do, because both of those teams are within a reach's distance of being in the playoffs. So 9 versus 10 there. And so those are the games that I looked at and said, you have to watch these games this weekend because these are the games that can affect the LA Galaxy. There are more games than you'd like to be watching at this point.
For me, I think LA FC and San Jose are out of the picture right now. I mean, you've got a claim there where they, of course, mathematically, they're within a shot. Realistically, I see it down to the Vancouver situation, but Vancouver to RSL. RSL is the jackal of this whole bunch where, you know, they're the biggest Jekyll and Hyde team in the country for me right now. And, you know, all credit to them. They've got their 39 points and level with us right now. But they're one of those 4 teams for 3 spots. But Vancouver, I mean, is playing a lot better football right now since they've gotten rid of Marc Dos Santos, and Vanni Sartini has come in here and really put a good run of form together where I think they've won like 6 of their last 10. This is not the same Vancouver that really actually has given us fits and has kind of hit our funny bone a few times. And then you throw in Portland, which is playing some fantastic ball. Real Salt Lake, hit or miss. And then Minnesota, I think, is a team that can defend really well. And that's where I think they've got an edge on a lot of us, where they can kill off a game if they're on their day. The schedules are really interesting because if you look at it, obviously 6 games remaining, and you talked about that Austin game for Minnesota. They have a game at home to Philadelphia 4 games after that on the 20th, and that's the only team outside of the Western Conference that they will face. And obviously they want the points, but it doesn't come at the cost of their opponent. So there's no 6-point swing basically, and that could have a big factor to play. Then they play LAFC away to Vancouver. Sporting is going to be a tough ask for them at home. And then, as I mentioned, the big game against LAFC. Vancouver have a little bit better of a run-in, very similar. It's hard when you look at the schedules of those 3 teams. I'm throwing Real Salt Lake out the window because I can't get my head wrapped around them.
Right.
But if you look at those 3 teams, it's hard to give a nod or an advantage to any of these 2 or any of these 3 right now as to where the strength of schedule and the caliber of opponent and based upon current form.
It's an interesting one. Dallas, Dallas, by the way, is the only team in the Western Conference not playing.
And they are better than their record.
They are. They absolutely
Houston,
are.
And we know Houston, Josh. I mean, you know, you've been part of this. I mean, good Lord. I mean, they are our bogey team, basically.
Well, so as it stands right now, the only team that the LA Galaxy for sure didn't lose to this season is LAFC. All right? Mm-hmm. They didn't lose a single game to them. Everybody else, except for Houston, has been taken care of. They have beaten the LA Galaxy this year in the Western Conference. So every other team in the Western Conference has beaten them except for LAFC and Houston, and they have to go at Houston in a game that, quite honestly, if you're a Galaxy fan and you believe this team can make the playoffs and do things, that you need to see them get points out of. They can't go down to Houston and roll over, and Houston should be dead by the time that they get there as well. I mean, there's not much Houston is playing for with 27 points, 12th place in the Western Conference, playing for pride, but how much pride do you really have? Their stadium is usually empty. It's not a happy place to be right now for Houston Dynamo. And by the way, all 3 Texas teams, 11th, 12th, and 13th in the Western Conference, the Galaxy got beat by Dallas and got beat by Houston, or Austin, and now they have a chance to hopefully not lose to Houston.
Is it me, Josh? And I was thinking about this too. How many pedestrian teams lower than us in the table have really served us a huge slice of humble pie? The Galaxy,
all of them,
not performed against teams that are, when you consider it in the table, lower caliber opposition. I think you and Panda talked about it earlier, about 2 or 3 months, or about 2 or 3 episodes ago, where 3 times the Galaxy have lost to the last place team in the Western Conference. You cannot allow that to happen. And that's where you kind of throw, where's the rhyme or reason in this, where we look at the strength of schedule and, Houston, where you think it's going to be 3 points on paper. Well, we know, no, that's not the case. That's not going to be an automatic. And then you throw in with FC Dallas when you've got a match winner who's on fine form like a Ricardo Pepi right now. Who knows what's going to happen? We know what he did last time against us.
Yeah.
So that's troubling to me when you cannot rise your performance, elevate your performance against teams that are of lesser caliber and lower than you in the table. That is really troubling right now. I don't think that's the case against the better teams. Personally, I think the Galaxy will be first to point out against Sporting Kansas City early this season. I thought they had one of their best performances, even though they didn't get any share of the points. So those games against lesser caliber opposition are what really are concerning.
I will tell you this to make you feel better. The Galaxy also don't win against teams that are above them in the standings either. So quite honestly, I'm trying to figure out where all the wins came from, because whenever I start talking about all these losses, I mean, there's been 11 wins. There's also been 11 losses, and there's been 6 draws. And by the way,
were we punching above our weight earlier this season? Or
did
are we
the
as good
Galaxy?
as we think we are? I mean, that's I was thinking about that. Were we punching above our weight, or were we performing where we were? I mean.
So two things can be true, and I think that they're both true. The Galaxy were overperforming. And certainly if you look at stats, I believe that is correct. And you can say they got lucky, and you can also call them character wins, however you want to call them. Yeah. But they were overperforming basically their stats in the first half. Actually, it's more than that. It's like the first 2/3 of the season that Galaxy actually played pretty well.
They're winning games they shouldn't have won.
They did, and so you look at those, and now you look at them, and now they're underperforming their stats. I mean, they have been in these games. They have been the dominant force in some of these games coming up, and they haven't been able to put the game away. They haven't even been able to get points out of them. Especially that RSL game is certainly a good one to look. I mean, even Austin, I know the Galaxy didn't play great, but they played good enough to put balls in the back of the net, and they didn't. LAFC in the first half, I thought the Galaxy were a dominant, pretty scary force against LAFC in that first half. They shrunk away from it in the second half a little bit. And by the way, LAFC didn't exactly elevate their game in that. It wasn't like they were going out there for blood either. They were trying to survive with the draw, and they did. So, you can look at this and say, they're both true, overperforming and underperforming, and they're underperforming through these, last 9 games. And it's winless in 9, could be winless in 10, which would be the second longest streak. The 12-game winless streak is the longest one in Galaxy history, and that 12-game winless streak came in 2008. 2007 had a 10-game, which 21 would match 2017, 17, not 2007. So, these are the sort of things that you have to put into. The one thing you haven't seen from the LA Galaxy this year, which I'm sort of sitting here saying, when do you get to see it, is not just going on an unbeaten streak, but going on a winning streak. The Galaxy haven't gone on a winning streak this year. I believe the longest single-season win streak this year has been 2 games. So the Galaxy have only won 2 games in any sort of stretch. So it's sort of the one thing. I've seen a little bit of the losing streak. I've seen the unbeaten streaks. I've seen the winless streaks. I've seen all those streaks. And if this is an inconsistent team, which we expect them to be, then if it's all going to equal itself out, and we expect the Galaxy to sort of be in that 4 to 6 range, then they have to win some games down here at the end of the season, and that's what should be happening. And the stats are pointing to that. The performance and talking to players is all pointing to that, Christian, but ultimately, you have to play the game. Ultimately, goals have to be scored. Goals have to be stopped. Those things have to play themselves out. And so, somebody said, well, what are the chances the Galaxy win the next 6 games? There's a chance. In fact, if they get hot, I could see them just suddenly filling with the confidence that they've been missing these last, 3 or 4 games. But hey, Christian, could I see the Galaxy going winless for the rest of the season as well? Yes. Absolutely. Oh. Tell me there's a cakewalk in there. Tell me there's an absolute win. Tell me the Galaxy have been able to do anything that is absolutely a win this year, right? Have you ever gone into a game being like, absolutely the Galaxy should win this game? You did earlier in the season, but they were overperforming earlier in the season. We were all on this false hype that was sort of building. And the thing, and by the way, me too, you look at it and you say, okay, I see that they're not playing great, but they're getting the wins. And know, eventually this team is going to build into that, Christian. Eventually they're going to build into a better team. Well, what's happened? Everybody's come back. Jonathan Bond talked about it on Thursday. Everybody came back. Right? Everybody was waiting for, oh man, Galaxy just need to get all their players back. And then once they have them all back, things are going to really start clicking. So the fact that they made it to a certain point without all their players and then get to this point and you're like, oh, well, they got them all back. Jonathan Bond said it's weird because it seems like as soon as we got all our players back, that's when we started to stumble. And it doesn't make sense. Irony. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. If you're sitting here explaining that at the beginning of the season, saying, oh, well, the Galaxy will play better without all their best players, and then whenever they get all their best players, they'll be worse. That doesn't make sense in terms of how things should go. So, yeah, I mean, that's sort of, I wanted to sort of touch on the schedule. I wanted to get that stuff, but I mean, you can't look at the next 6 games and predict anything in there that even approaches, I think, a reasonable guess, because I can see all the different options.
After that game against Real Salt Lake, and you and I have text and we talk. I mean, you're a fool for trying to prognosticate with this team right now because they were underperforming, but getting better results than they probably should have in the first few games. A lot of that's down to having a match winner like a Chicharito who's gone off color and then had those injury problems. And then a game against RSL is really a microcosm where, you were the better team. How they came away with nothing out of that is beyond me. And they played them off the park in large stretches, and they had their chances, didn't take them. So there's also another theme here. I mean, besides the defensive miscues, and I'm not here to poo-poo on it, but the application has been, it's not a shortage of application, in my opinion. This team grafts, they're giving it everything they've got. And that's where I think they will come good out of this stretch eventually, because that is an underlying theme that is a constant, I believe, with this team, that there is no shortage of application. Yes, it's been misguided. Yes, they've shot themselves in the foot. There's been silly errors here and there. Chance after chance after chance hasn't been taken. And there's also, underlying resonating problems, namely, from a defensive standpoint, that are going to persist. But I think application is one of those things that we should acknowledge from this team, because even, when they're out of gas against LAFC and they, it wasn't pretty to watch, it was not from a shortage of application whatsoever. And I think that, for me, that's where you look at a manager and say, when you're on a winless run, everybody looks to the manager.
Right.
And these people that are shouting for Greg Vanney's head, to me, are absolute morons.
Right.
Because when you're getting the application, that is a sign that the management is there and they're listening to him and they're adhering and heeding his call and his advice and he's motivating him. When they come out flat and you're not getting the application, then that's when you really got to start to worry, because when the performance is matching the results, that's when the alarm bells go off. So I'm not worried about that in that regard, and I know that the right man is in charge. I really highly rate Greg. I think he's a fantastic manager personally. And to me, it's on the players at this point.
Yeah.
They're not getting it done. He has put them into positions to succeed.
You
and they're flat out just not getting it done right now.
The chances are being created, like we said. If you don't create the chances, then something else needs to change. But the chances are there. The finishing's not there. So very interesting. All right, we're gonna start wrapping things up. I want to remind everybody, Dignity Health Sports Park put out the vaccine and testing requirements again coming up for Portland. Now, there was a Liga MX game that got played over the weekend. From what I heard and what I saw from people saying that they went to the game, is that this system wasn't really up and running and that they weren't really enforcing any of the requirements that were supposed to be enforced during this. So remember, you have to have a vaccination card, you have to have a photo of a vaccine card, you have to have the digital California State Health one or any other of those digital ones along with your valid ID to sort of prove that you've been vaccinated, or you have to have a test within 72 hours. For this exhibition game, I know the Galaxy were doing on-site testing. I believe they're doing that for Portland as well. If you're going to do on-site testing, I would encourage you to show up very, very, very early to the game if you want to do all that and not be hassled. And by the way, everybody who's going to the Portland game, you want to get there early anyway, because this is, it's a Saturday night game. We expect a big crowd. I usually expect on Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. games. Those are the games that get the biggest crowds. They always have consistently. So I expect that there's going to be 20,000 plus in the stadium to see the Galaxy take on Portland. So you're going to want to get there early. Then you're going to have to go through all this other stuff that might also get in the way of that. So I think the Galaxy were requesting that for a 7 p.m. game time that you show up no later than 5 p.m. just to give you a heads up of where everybody was sort of saying how early to get there. So they were saying 5 p.m. So 7:30, 5:30. We'll see as that sort of comes down, and again, we'll have a bigger preview for that on.
Now, are the gates
Thursday.
opening up earlier than normal?
I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe. Who knows? I haven't seen that yet. We should get an idea of what that game is going to be like before a Thursday show, so we'll have a little more information on that as we get a little bit closer. Galaxy do have a media call availability coming up on Thursday. It's Greg Vanney plus the select player, so I don't know who that's going to be yet. I'm sure we can try to figure that. Usually I can help select some of the players, so we'll see who ends up talking.
You're running this whole show now, aren't you?
Yeah, that's what I like to do. Whenever I have a real job and I have to do other things, and I'm like texting and doing other things about Galaxy all the time. I text you all the time, so that's my. I have a 10-minute break. Let me think about something Galaxy related, so that way I can not think about numbers or something else that's going on. So it's my stress relief and my stressor at the same time. Having
that's a good. You know what? That's football in a microcosm.
It sounds, yeah. Oh man, I can't wait to go to the Galaxy. I know I see fans all the time. I can't wait to go to the Galaxy game. They lost. Oh, they ruined my whole weekend. Why do I do this?
That's true.
I get it. I 100%.
I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm like Sophie, so as well. Trust me, I know that.
Yeah, there's some deep underlying problems with all that. So for sure. All right. I think that about does it. Nothing else really that I wanted to touch on today, but hey, we survived a power outage, so hey, that's always. I think that's the first one ever in the history of Corner of the Galaxy. By the way, through 13 seasons and
shocking.
almost not shocking because there was no shock to have. Almost 900 shows, so our first power outage. So congratulations to everybody for hanging on there with us and getting through that. All right, anything else, Christian, you want to get to before we get out of here?
Huge game. Have to start well. Got to get better from set pieces. Portland has a huge chink in the armor. They give up more goals from set pieces than anybody in this league. The Galaxy, for me, that's one thing I wanted to touch on because I know I listened to these calls you have with Greg, and these short corners, they drive me bananas. But I'm going to keep faith in Greg because he knows what he's doing, and he's a smarter man than I am. I don't see it personally. Get that ball in the box. There is a massive weakness there with Portland. Something I'd like to see us exploit when you talk about guys like we've got, like a 6'5" Nick DePew and Steris in there. We need to get goals. We need goals from a supporting source because we're Chicha's struggling right now. So be wary of Portland. It's a team that is dangerous, mobile, lethal. Front four is just something that really scares me right now. This is a very good football team.
All right, we will keep an eye on that. All right, Christian, tell people where they can find you. We'll go.
C-Mile Sports over on Twitter. You can catch me on Pac-12 Network. And, of course, along with being Joe Totino's stunt double, you can catch me over on occasionally Sirius XM-FC when they take our games from the LA Galaxy radio stream, which you could also find on lagalaxy.com and over on YouTube. So check us out. If you can't listen to Joe and Kobe, happy to have you have a listen. Please.
please listen. Please listen.
Please listen.
Christian,
no one listens to me.
Christian does a great job, and so please check it out whenever you can. Thanks for coming on, Christian. Certainly appreciate it. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at @JGuesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Please head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com, where you can find all of our articles, all of our podcasts, all of our fun stuff right there. Cornerofthegalaxy.com will provide you coverage leading up to the Portland game coming up 7:30 p.m. Spectrum Sportsnet this weekend. So it should be a huge game and getting ready to close out the season. All right, for Mr. Christian Miles standing in for the Traveling Panda, I am Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.